republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Any additions, deletions, reordering of the agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman.
There are any minutes, right? So we will move on to cases and swearing in of staff members.
I'm going to ask Mr. Shimosky to unmute, and I'm going to pin him. He is online, and he will be providing testimony in new business item A. Jeff, you're going to have to raise your right hand, and when Sherry swears everybody in.
If you plan to give testimony this evening, please stand and raise your right hand. You swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If so, say yes.
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 Okay, so I see we have a publication for the 30187 case, which is new business A.
Just give us 1 second, Mr. Chairman, and staff will get started on the presentation. If you could read the Okay, hold on 1 second.
And just to clarify, we have no withdrawals on this. Agenda.
You call for board disclosures.
I know, yes. Board disclosures. All-
Nothing, sir.
No.
Tricia? Disclosures? Okay. So we'll move on to item A.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Aaron Sita with the City of Lake Worth Beach Community Sustainability Department. The item before you is a request for a variance for a 6-foot-high fence in the required setback for a property located at 301 8th Avenue North. The subject property is a non-contributing resource in the Northeast Lucerne Historic District. It is located in the single-family residential zoning district. The future land use is single-family residential. You can see here is the general location. It is located in the southwest corner of North Ocean Breeze and 8th Avenue North. Here is the property file documentation. It is a masonry vernacular structure. Here is the fence in question. This is the applicant installed the fence in this location outside the scope of their permit and is requesting a variance to allow the fence to be retained in an existing location. I'll go into, before I get any farther, I want to go into kind of your role in this case. So you, as I've spoken to, because we have a lot of new members, you have kind of 2 hats here. One is your certified local government review board hat, which you're reviewing items, architectural improvements for compliance with our historic preservation ordinance. And the other is as a land planning agency and a board responsible for the implementations and review of projects for consistency with the LDRs. So, and is in that role which you will see this request tonight. So for a lot of you, I think you were here last month, the only hat you wore was your historic hat. And this is the first time you're really wearing this hat where you're looking at the land development regulations and in that capacity. So moving on, here's the current photographs of the fence. And so just some background. So it's hard. I will show you because you guys don't have the background. So I'm just going to take you on a little bit of a trip here. Lake Worth planning and zoning. Here we go. Just for some general backup information for you guys not pertaining to this specific project. But whenever you're looking for LDRs or you're looking for information, if you go to our planning and zoning webpage, all of our LDRs are here along with some of our elements of our comprehensive plan. And then what's really neat about the city is not every city has this, is this is 801, 301, 8th, right? So you can see here's the subject property. And what's really neat here is these links, this will work for any property in the city, can take you to the zoning district requirements, the use regulations, and the parking requirements. It also tells you if you're in a historic district or in a and if that property is contributing. So that's a really neat little tool. It's very interactive. So we ask people just go ahead and call and confirm if their property is contributing or not, because sometimes the front is or pieces or something else. So just if you're before you make financial decisions, but it's a good general information to get you in the right direction. If it's contributing or not contributing, it's a good first step. So here are our land development regulations for our single family district. And since you haven't had a lot of exposure to the single family district, is our lots, the front of our lots are always determined which line is the front, right? It's always the part where it's the narrowest frontage on the right of way. So for this particular lot here, the legal front of the lot is going to be here. And so what is governed by a front? Okay. What does that mean what's the front property line? Well, the biggest impact on the front property line is going to be the setback. So the front setback in the single family district is 20 feet. The rear setback is 15 feet or 5 feet for accessory structures. And the side setback is for a 50-foot lot is 10% of the lot width, which is 5 feet. So then in our second part of our code, which you guys will begin to slowly get familiar with, is we have a section called section 23.4-4. This is our fences and walls section. And again, I'm doing a lot more for you guys because just to kind of get your feet wet. So again, in our section and walls section by the use type, so for single family and two family, these are the fence requirements. So it says on the front property line, on that portion of the side property line from the front property line to the front building subbit, basically the front, you can have a maximum height of 4 feet, right? So you can have 4 feet in the front. And then on the side and the rears, the maximum height is 6 feet, but you need a setback of 30 inches from the property line and provide a landscape screen when it is adjacent to a roadway except an alley, okay? And that is where we get into the context of what the request is. So what was determined to be the front and the side property line and how this kind of case came about. And as you can see from the background, we had been working with the applicant for a long time. The applicant originally came in 2019. Oh, sorry. Yeah, from the current slide. There we go. So, and then we had a series of meetings and discussions. And you can see, and basically what happened is what we were able to do administratively, we essentially stretched as far as we could. So because the front door is on the side property line, the legal side property line, what we did is we made the determination for the purposes of the fence only, we would treat a portion of the side property line as a front property line, which would allow the 4-foot fence to be placed all the way to the front. So if you want to go ahead and see here, her fence plan, the applicant's fence plan here, what this determination allowed was here is the front door of the property. It allowed this 4-foot fence here to be placed all the way at the front property line. And then we allowed this to be treated as a side property line, which required it to be set back. If we had treated this as a front property line, the fence would have been required to be set back to the building setback line of 5 feet. So it was a stretch for us administratively. What the applicant is asking is beyond what staff can approve administratively. So we basically made the determination that this is okay, this is the property line, but we can't then go and say, oh, well, if this is the property line, then you don't have to do the side setback, because there is no 6-foot fence in our code in residential that is directly adjacent to right-of-way like this. That's no longer permitted. It was previously allowed, but this configuration is no longer permitted. So it either has to be set to the front building setback line, which in the front yard is 20 feet, or in this case, we would allow for 5 feet, or it needs to be a side property line and set back 30 inches with the landscape screen. It's one or the other. So again, so basically this discussion evolved with the applicant, and we were able to do that for them administratively. And it went through a large process. The permit was issued with that essentially compromise position. And then once the permit was issued and inspected and passed, the applicant removed the 6-foot portion of the fence and reinstalled it at the property line, which is what was the desired configuration without a permit. So then in the meantime, there was a variance. The variance was denied by this board approximately a year ago. A year has passed. The applicant has come back. They are now in code enforcement for work without a permit for that rear portion or that side portion of 6 feet that got relocated. It was originally installed 30 inches from the property line with landscaping. It was removed without a permit and reinstalled at the property line. It's a very complicated. Are you guys picking up the story? Okay, so again, this goes back to what the applicant specifically is asking here on the side property line. And we determined, like I said, in the compromise position that staff held, we said, okay, that rear portion of the side property line, we will count as side instead of continuously counting that entire property line as front. So we gave the applicant 30 inches instead of the required 5 feet administratively. And then that's when, after the fact and that permit was issued and passed, then that was when the work without the permit occurred to the property line. So again, our zoning analysis is this is 6 feet fences are not allowed adjacent to rights of way. And there's 2 reasons why, kind of the theory is why we don't want 6-foot fences against the rights of way. One is it creates a very kind of bland visual barrier. If you walk along, especially in our historic districts, when we have those PVC fences, it's a big plastic white wall down the line. Setting it back provides a softer, kind of more tropical landscape feeling. The other piece is typically public works departments do not want private property owners to install fences against sidewalks. Why? That costs the city a lot of money, basically. So if the sidewalk needs to be repaired and your fence is damaged in the city's repair of the sidewalk, the city has to cover the damage to your fence. So we've actually, our public works department has asked us to look at all fencing and maybe have a minimum setback for all fencing to save the city some money, because whenever they do a sidewalk repair or replace, the city often incurs costs to replace private property fencing. Okay, so now you're here. That's a very long story, okay? And so in that story, there's these LDRs, right? Criteria. So if you would like to grant the variance, you make the determination that this variance meets these criteria, and it has to meet all of them, okay? And I'm going to walk you through the criteria, and staff does not feel this variance meets, the variance request meets the criteria. So the first one, and this is the one which we particularly disagree with, is that a special circumstance or conditions exist which are peculiar to the land or to the building for which the variance is sought and do not apply generally to nearby lands and buildings. And this configuration of a building where the front door faces the side is actually a very typical configuration in the neighborhood. And you can see here, these are just houses within a few blocks. They have all complied with the side property line and have provided some type of landscaping and have set back, and they all have a front door facing the numbered cross street. Again, the strict application would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the property or land. Staff does not feel that the 30 inches with the landscape screen deprives the applicant of reasonable use of the property. The variance is the minimum required to make possible for reasonable use of the land. And the granting of the variance in accordance in the spirit or purpose of this chapter will not be unduly injurious to contiguous property or the surrounding neighborhood. It is deemed to be necessary, desirable, and you can read that on. So again, staff has made the determination that the subject property doesn't meet. Here is the property directly across the street, which complies again with the LDRs. And these are the potential motions. I will turn it over to the applicant now. I believe Wes Blackman is speaking on behalf of the property owner today.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
It is this property approving code fines?
It is my understanding.
So they're in code
Mhm.
violation. Also, as far as the variance, I mean, we've stressed it so many times, how important what we do is and how specific a variance is. It is a very elaborate.
So like Aaron said, grant a variance, it is particular to the land. It has to meet those criteria that are in the staff report and that she just showed you on the slides. If it doesn't meet the criteria, then you don't grant the variance. If you feel like it does meet the criteria, then you can grant the variance, but it really hinges on those criteria.
Good evening, board. My name is Wes Blackman. I'm a certified urban planner with CWB Associates, and I'm representing Giovanna Timor at 301 Avenue. You might ask, why is Wes Blackman standing here? Well, Wes Blackman is standing here because about a year ago, he happened to be watching a YouTube video of the meeting before the Preservation Board when the variance was first published. And I kind of, it was a jump out of your chair moment and say, you know, gosh, I think this property does have special circumstances. And I'm not a ambulance chasing planner or anything, but I did happen to meet Giovanna and engaged with her possible solutions to this. One of them is to look at and get people interested in addressing the code, so it is very clear exactly what is required and what is allowed in terms of fencing, especially when one property backs up the federal highway. And the reason why this property jumped out to me is I said, oh, that's the house that I see when I go south on Federal Highway that we have in north. I know this house because I can see it from Federal Highway. Well, if I can see it from Federal Highway, the house and people in the yard can see me on Federal Highway and everything else that goes on from Federal Highway. So I've talked, I know commissioners have been to the property. We have talked to commissioners about the possible thinking of code. There has been a staff shortage in terms of looking at this priority wise. I think it's fences, walls, and gates needs to be looked at. What happened was the calendar kept flipping, and then suddenly we're at 12 months past the original approval. So Giovanna made another application, and that's why we're here tonight. So they called and now the present for a reason, and that's because it's a gift. So what came before, we can make a new night. And what I would like to present to you is that I agree that this fence in this current location meets the variance criteria. And I find that there are many special circumstances or conditions that do exist that are peculiar to the land or building, of which the variance is sought and do not apply generally to nearby lands and buildings. First of all, it is adjacent to an alley and has full exposure of Federal Highway to the west, and that is immediately visible. The house itself is elevated slightly from the grade of the road, so that also increases the need for visual screening from the road and from the house to each other. It is also a piece of property that has a very small 6.5 foot front or side yard along the southern property line. So this is their only yard, essentially. So if they have any kind of outdoor activity, it's going to be in the northwest corner of the property. And so there is additional need for privacy there. It is off the alley, I mentioned that. There's also a high volume of pedestrian traffic. And the property owner can tell you of instances that have abated since this fence went in. And it's also important to realize that this is more a waiver of a landscape screening than fence height variance. Because a 6-foot fence is allowed, it's just here, it doesn't have the 30 inches from the right of way. So there is a grade differential, and there are also trees immediately inside that south side of the fence, which would, you're eating into 72.5 square feet of yard area that is otherwise not available, which is the only active yard area in the property. The strict applications of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the land for which the variance is sought. And that is essentially having a lawn area that they feel private and they have a sense of well-being and can enjoy the out of doors without being exposed to federal highway and being able to have some degree of privacy. The variance proposed is the minimum variance, which makes possible the reasonable use of the land and building. This is only 2 additional feet until the stand of 29 feet. We're not talking about the entire circumference of the property, and it is just the 2 additional feet, and it's not 7 feet. It is to 6 feet, which would be allowed otherwise, just without the landscape screen. And granting of the variance will be in accordance with the spirit and purpose of this chapter and not be unduly injurious to contiguous property or the surrounding neighborhood. There are numerous letters of support. I think there were at least 11 from the neighbors saying that they support the fence in the current configuration. So with that, I would just remind the new members that there are many small decisions that seem small within this room, but when you make them, they really do have large implications for people's lives and the quality of life that people have within a city like this. So we urge your consideration of approving the variance, and we do have another expert online which will address this. Thank you.
I have a question. Can I ask it now before the other expert, or do you want me to wait?
They really need to finish their testimony because they only have about 10, 15 minutes to give, so Jeff, if you could please introduce yourself and state your qualifications and your relationship to the applicant.
Hi, my name is Jeff Shimonsky. I'm president of Tropical Designs of Florida. I'm a member of the American Society of Consulting Arborists. I'm an ISA certified municipal arborist. I'm ISA certified tree risk assessed qualification. And I'm a Florida certified landscape inspector, amongst other things. I've been in this industry almost 50 years. I have extensive experience in site development and all kinds of work with trees. I've known Giovanna Timur for years. I'm actually doing this as a friend because I realized she had a zoning issue with her fence, and I looked at some of the conditions and I offered my help in regards to the trees and the landscaping. So one of the things the first thing I did, and I work in hearings, give hearings all the time and testimony and depositions. Depending on the municipality I'm in, I go to Municode and I look up, in this case, the landscape code. So in chapter 23, article 6, environmental regulations, the Municode for your municipality states all major and minor maintenance of trees shall be performed following pruning standards set by National Arborist Association pruning standards for shade trees by the way, which is out of date, and the American National Standards for Tree Care Operations, the A300, which are the current standards. But that is in the code. So I'm looking at a photograph right now of the two mango trees right next to the driveway, just inside the fence. It's being contested. And what I want to do, I've taken some standards out of the ANSI standards to explain the ANSI A300 standard part 5, critical root zone. The critical root zone is the minimum volume of roots necessary to have for tree health and stability. If that fence is moved in 30 inches, those trees will not survive. First of all, you'd have to cut off all the branches. And second of all, you'd create such a small root zone that those trees would die. And the issue with moving the fence inside or 30 inches from the sidewalk, I found interesting that I saw the zoning analysis photo that showed a newly planted clusia hedge right next to a sidewalk. Well, clusias are tree species, and I've rated tens of thousands of plants over the last 10 years. And clusia will get to 20 or 30 feet high. Those trees should not be planted within 30 inches of the sidewalk. As a matter of fact, 30 inches will require a lot of maintenance over time. I saw some of the photos of some of the adjacent properties that you just showed. There are agaves planted next to the sidewalk. Those are dangerous. This will require a lot of work. Yes, can you plant some plants 30 inches from the sidewalk? That would take a tremendous amount of maintenance. It's not practical. So if this fence was moved 30 inches back, there's really not a whole lot of plants you could put in there that would actually really grow. So that's definitely not practical. So I think for the mango trees that are currently there, leaving the fence in that position, they would survive. They would do well. They're growing well right now. I can see they're in good condition from this photo, but moving the fence in would kill them. You'd have to remove those trees. So I'd be glad to entertain any questions you have.
Yeah, I have a question. It was first on Wes Blackman's presentation. I believe the area we're talking about is the area on 8th Avenue North. Is that correct? The fence on that? We're not asking them to change the fence facing Federal, or am I wrong?
No,
That's correct. That's correct.
yeah.
Okay, so the issue with the driving along Federal, yeah, I can understand that, but that's not the fence in question. The fence in question is the fence along 8th Avenue North. So there will still, there's still 6 feet allowed right to the edge on that side.
an 8-foot fence is allowed along the alley side.
Right, that's the alley side, right? That's the area that people can drive by. That's the area right by the church parking lot. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Along 8th Avenue North, if you're standing on in the driveway and looking northwest toward Federal Highway, you would have a clear view, and the people on Federal Highway have a clear view of you standing in that area without the fence. Because a portion of the fence does screen from the northwest, and the primary view corridor is the northwest.
And it still is a block away. It's not right on Federal. I mean, you do have the church parking lot there, yeah. So what you're saying is that the fence area in question starts, can you point it for us exactly where?
Sure.
Sure.
It's
What about that little angle part? Is that angle part allowed?
so we allowed the angle part here from about here, the midpoint forward. This is going to be a 6-foot section that can then wrap to the setback, the required setback of 30 inches. The applicant can also do a 4-foot fence here with like a narrower hedge, like a I think it's a podocarpus, the right one. that would be a very narrow hedge that could be maintained and that could grow higher than even the 6 feet, which would add additional privacy. And that would give that green feel with the 4-foot fence there. And then that could be with an 8-foot fence and gate on the rear as well.
And then I just have one other question about the mango trees. Is a mango tree the type of tree that you have to get permission from the city to cut down?
I believe, I think if it's over a certain, I don't 100% know. I know
I know that
most,
some fruit trees you can just cut down without permission.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if mango, I mean, I've had the horticulturist over to my place and he said, "Oh, that you can cut, that you can't," I just wasn't sure. 'Cause-
I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah,
I don't, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So honestly,
Yeah.
I'd have to pull the ordinance.
Yeah, okay.
I have another question. You said that the fence was originally at the 30-inch setback and then was moved back
Mhm.
to the, okay. And what was the reason for it being moved back to the?
I believe the applicant is here. I don't know. I mean, that she had said that she had wanted this configuration for privacy in the rear. That's in the, so.
The applicant.
Ms. Tamor, if you can state your name and address for the record when you go up, okay? Say
My name is Giovanna Dominguez Tino. 301 Avenue. I had prepared presentation as well. I never had a setback. And I never had a 6-foot fence prior to this 29-foot section of 6-foot fence. That was incorrect information. I had a 4-foot original fence on that section without a setback. I never had a setback because I have no room for a setback because it's steep. I elevated the 6-foot, to 6 feet, that 29-foot section. The entire fence, 112 feet, linear feet off of the south side, the triangle coming off the side. The driveway still does not have a fence, period. I have no fence in front of the driveway because I was denied a rolling gate permit. Because this case has been open for so long. And I asked the pastor to let me put a vinyl screen on his chain link fence to deter some of the visuals from Federal Highway. But when you stand against my fence, against the fence on 8th Avenue North, Federal High, everybody sees us. And I wanted to tell you what has transpired and why I elevated that small 29-foot section. My daughter is here and she wanted to speak to you as well.
Did that answer your question? Do you think she does have, presentation in the daughter?
I just want to state for the record that, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The notes here, it was the 4-foot fence was along 8th Avenue North in that section and then was approved and then was permitted. Then after the permit was closed out, was replaced with the 6-foot fence in the same location.
And there was never a setback.
Right, so you had a 4-foot fence and then you got a permit, but you decided to
Yes.
go ahead and put up the 6-foot even though you didn't have approval for that.
Correct,
Right.
but there is a lot of history, a great deal of history back to 2018 of my attempting to elicit understanding as to why we desperately needed this.
Okay, so why the applicant make their presentation, that your daughter wants to make the presentation, I'll finish up the presentation.
Thank you, and I will answer. I was nervous, so I wrote down my notes to give you some history. And thank you for listening. I know staff has given you the technical descriptions of the site plan and its architecture, and they're made their recommendations based on the letter of the code. I've heard this. I understand this. I have had a great deal of communication, as I said, with every staff member, all the way up to city manager, Mr. Bornstein before, and the former city attorney, Pamela Ryan, who gave their
their feedback to me as to why why the code needed to be adhered to, this, the letter of the code, the letter of the code. This is the only thing I have ever heard. Anyway, in the justification statement that was included in your packets, I listed and described in detail why our case is one of the finest candidates for a variance, and included our journey from the perspective of homesteaded residents who have been suffering and pleading with staff for several years regarding the exceptional circumstance we have been living with since we first discovered the degree of exposure and lack of privacy and security we have on this corner so close to Federal Highway. It is a decision whether to use the strictest letter of the code instead of employing the spirit of the code in order to help us with our desperate circumstances. And it is why we are here again, not just for ourselves, but for every other possibility that will certainly come before you in this ever-changing community. We are a one-income household. To date, we have paid permit for our fence project, for a rolling gate, for revisions, for variance costs, for stipulated agreement that triggered a lien on May 28, 2022 at $75 per day. That has now triggered an authorization of foreclosure. All of these expenses have brought an incredible amount of stress to me and my daughter. All of it over a small and lovely section of fence that we desperately need. We have lived here since 2017 when we bought our home. We came to this area from Dade County when my daughter got accepted to drive to School of the Arts for string performance. We have suffered many incidents. The most recent, just 3 days ago, when 3 stained glass panels were stolen from my mahogany art piece on that very 29-foot section of fence. The police came, they wrote a report and confirmed that they're very busy and short-handed. They recommended I buy a second camera. Over the years, there has been an increase in pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, speeding cars and motorcycles, prostitution, open drug use, solicitation, and theft. We had a motorcycle crash into our fence. A man we thought was dead at our front door with his foot against the front door that ended up being an overdose. An unknown person sleeping still in our unsecured west side yard that meets the alley, leaving garbage and alcohol containers behind. My daughter actually refused to spend time outdoors after being harassed repeatedly along 8th Avenue by various men from 2017 until I elevated that 29-foot section of fence against code. I have been in public service my entire adult life. Despite our limited income, we are once again bringing forward this case, a case which has been escalated instead of closed in our favor, despite the mountain of information that staff has received regarding the strength of our claim, and despite the mountain of support we have received from neighbors and city officials alike. We are still here bringing forward this case even after being forced to respond to all of these charging documents and consequences, and after having to spend what is a great deal of money for our family. We're still here risking everything we have because we want to effect change for the good of all residents who might have to face a similar predicament, because it is the right thing to do. Our home is not just a site plan that somehow offends the city with its 29-foot section that violates our written code. It is where we live every day and every night, and where only we can report what life is like for us, and why we need this entire west side of our property to be private and secure. I want you to know that that west side property is the side that meets all the backyards along Ocean Breeze. The other side, the side on Ocean Breeze, is where everybody's front yards are. So we have 2 side yards, and I have 8 feet of green at my front door that goes all the way to the alley. As Mr. Weston Rackman mentioned, our property stands inches higher than the sidewalk. So our 6-foot fence is actually 5.5 feet high from our perspective. This is a 6-foot fence. There's a 6-foot fence directly across on 8th Avenue. All across 8th Avenue. But she has a front door on Ocean Breeze, so that is her backyard. And it appears higher due to our elevation. It has been my experience in my long career that people who intend to engage in rebellion don't invest so much time in soliciting understanding and don't plead for help from those in positions of power to help. Despite all of our efforts over the years, all we ever heard was the repeated citing of the code, as if it was a rigid, unyielding thing that has nothing to do with people or their lives. The fact remains that there is no code, no ordinance, rule, standard, or any other document produced by human beings that can cover every contingency. For God's sakes, even our Constitution was designed to allow for checks on power and for amendment. And it is universally considered one of the most enlightened documents ever created by human beings. Even the most law-abiding citizens can be pressed into desperate actions, which is what happened to me. And you will hear from my daughter. When a government entity turns away from their pleas and disregards or ignores their particular set of circumstances while citing the letter of a code. It has been my experience that independent minds have a great capacity to see the truth. This is why juries are made of our peers and advisory boards are made of our residents, all of whom may have encountered a particular obstacle or situation that frustrated them in their own lives and can see where we are coming from tonight. I want to add that while we do not have the support. I'm sorry?
Please wrap up.
Oh. I also want to say that I have at least 11 letters with me from neighbors who sent in letters. And I want to say that they really want that fence to stay. They love the fence. And they don't want to see our cars parked on the driveway. They told us they admire the beauty of the fence. And they don't want to see the laundry hanging on the line. I don't have a dryer, so we hang our laundry on the line. They prefer to see the fence with the wood and glass artwork that we placed on it. And they offered our support. The pastor across the street, I said, allowed me to put a screen while I've been waiting for to put a rolling gate. So once I have that rolling gate, then everything will be 6 feet on that side, because the rolling gate will match the rest of the 6-foot fence that is all on that side. So once that rolling gate comes in, then everything will match on that side, and we will have privacy and security that we haven't been able to enjoy since 2017. Thank you for listening. I also made House of the Month for August 2022. The Hrpb selected my house. And I brought you an email that I think was, if I can just finish with this. We're back again for the same exact variance. And while the board last year denied our variance, I had an apology from your chair.
Yeah, because you got him very upset last meeting.
Yeah,
You pissed off the entire board, and he repeated what you said and had to write a thank you note.
Okay, this, I like it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Point one, little quick question. How much testimony do you have for this case? I mean, is it time limited or?
There should be.
Okay.
We should be about 10 minutes from the applicant and then questions. I know we only have 2 cases, so I know the chair, but we do need to wrap up because you've had 2 other people testify on your behalf. So we're about 25 minutes of testimony right now.
thank you. I only wanted to say that here, if you want to see. He apologized, but he also admitted that the site plan was unusual and provided no price. I have it here if you want. I can give you. Thank you for listening. Hi, my name is Gabriela Mizon. I'm Giovanna's daughter. The situation is not a matter of whether we want to have a fence that makes our property look prettier, but because it is a matter of safety and privacy primarily. Our neighborhood is mostly a quiet and beautiful place that we love living in. But as you well know, there are also many dangers as well that we face like any other neighborhood. Personally, I would like to explain to you why our fence helped too. Before my mom raised the fence height, often I would wash my car or sometimes sunbathe. I would be harassed, whistled at, the list goes on. I'm a classical musician. And sometimes I would prefer to practice my music outside. And there have been times when strangers would walk into our garage without invitation because they heard me playing. We have had random people sleeping in our driveway, leaving behind their beer bottles while we were sleeping inside our house, overly curious people looking into our yard, and we have even discovered a man passed out on our front porch because he overdosed one night and thought was deceased. When it comes to our situation, the difference between our house and other neighbors' houses is where it is located. Almost daily, we hear people walking in front of our house from Federal Highway, yelling extremely late at night. We find used beer cans laying in front of our fence, and we have even found dog droppings in our yard because people allow their dogs to walk right into our property. The location of our house is not ideal compared to others in Jericho, but we have to have some kind of privacy that makes us feel safe here, rather than feeling like we shouldn't be here anymore. When it comes to rules and regulations, I believe there are rules that make plenty of sense, but when it comes to our fence that our neighbors have continually complimented and enjoyed, what is the harm? It seems that when we try to do the right thing and file a permit for our fence, we are now being penalized over a couple foot difference because the only trees that we have in our yard that we love would have to be removed. We have been told that our fence needs to be cut down to 4 feet, but what privacy would that provide when I'm 6 feet tall? We only wish to beautify our home and feel safe. I hope that you as a board and local residents could try and understand our position and see what our neighbors see. A beautiful fence along with a beautiful home that finally allows us to feel safe and private so that we can finally live peacefully.
I have a question for the arborist.
Yes, I'll pin him.
Yes, sir.
You were stating that if we had the fence moved back 30 inches, it would kill the mango trees. So I'm just trying to understand. I know that it might impact a small area possibly with the fence post going into an area, but there's not a footer or anything that's going across that area. So I'm not completely understanding how a fence post is going to impact a mango tree, which are actually quite resilient to decline to the point where it would have to be removed.
I'm sorry, I had difficulty understanding you, and I'm not sure what the question was.
I'm trying to understand how putting a fence post pole in, which may or may not be close to the trunk of the tree or close to the root zone of the tree, is going to impact a mango tree to the point where it's going to decline and have to be removed.
Well, as I understand it, you're asking me how moving the fence would impact the mango trees, right? And so you can see the fence from this aerial photo and you can see where the branches are. So if you move that fence in approximately 3 feet, you're within 1 to 2 feet of the trunk of those trees, and you're going to end up removing probably almost half of the canopy of that tree because the fence would be in the way. Because if you look, the branches are pretty low. That's detrimental to trees, and that's not the way you maintain trees. You know, your own code quotes the ANSI A300 standards, and the ANSI A300 standards would not allow the removal of that much of a canopy, especially the main structural branches on that tree. Also, putting the fence there, you'd lose part of the critical root zone. Because I'm sure there'd be much less irrigation on the side that's facing the sidewalk on the other side of the fence. Those trees would go into decline. That's not a practical thing to do with those trees there. And those mango trees would be kept low so that they can be used to produce fruit. They're dooryard fruit trees.
I think what's most important though is, what's more important to the owner, the safety that they're of course extremely concerned about. I can appreciate that, or losing part of the canopy of the mango trees. If that's, if that's one or the other, I don't know.
Well, I don't know what's very sustainable about cutting those trees in half or removing them. Those trees, as they get bigger, are going to certainly provide a lot of shade. Everybody talks about sustainability, and yet they cut these trees and they damage them, or they talk about removing them. That's just going to increase the amount of heat in that area. A practical thing to do is to leave the fence where it is and allow those trees to grow and provide shade.
I have a question real quick, or comment. About the gate. I mean, is that approved? Are you waiting on it? What's the status of that?
I paid for a permit and I was refunded only $18 and it was rejected because of this case is open. So
So-
until this case
Right.
is open, I didn't know this.
So my question is, if, I think we all see the issue. I live in a very similar situation to this. I mean, I look out my window and see Dixie Highway, and there's only 4-foot wall and very similar circumstances. So I do empathize with you with what's going on, and trees and all that stuff really, to me, is kind of a red herring here. So as far as the barrier or creating a visual buffer from federal highway, I think most people rationally would agree that you need something there, right? So I understand how this cannot be seen compatibly with the fence, and perhaps granting the fence, if you're willing to give up and say, let's put the 4-foot fence on the sidewalk and have this case settle itself. So, and the reason why I'm saying that is because when you look at this, the history of it, I just came on the board right now, and you see the historical snapshot of it. And by the way, you've got a really good person representing you in West, who's one of the best. I have as an attorney, I have a very difficult time when you have a code and you have notice, and people take matters into their own hands. And I empathize with you, because I have a very similar situation. It just doesn't feel right to me. And also too, you have to consider as well, there's other, in the neighborhood you live in, you want some kind of consistency. So the pedestrian itinerary is consistent and it's not disrupted so much. So I think holistically, if you look at the property, I think there's a way that you could probably, I'm assuming you could negotiate something to get the gate in the back for privacy, and keep the 4-foot fence along with the code, and create a buffer with landscaping behind it, which is what I've had.
If I can clarify, the reason why the permit for the gate was declined is because she has an ongoing code enforcement violation
Okay.
for work without a permit. So once the code violation is open, so we don't issue development orders, or if you're doing work without permit, the building official won't issue you new permitted work to do more permitted work until you resolve your issue. And so that's part of what's coming in here today. The resolution of this, either approval or denial of the variance or approval with conditions, would then allow for that, give direction to Mr. Moore on what the next steps were, so she could resolve that and then get her rear gate installed.
Yeah, just the final thought. For me, I had a really tough time when people take matters in their own hands, and that. So,
And I have apologized ad nauseum. It was an act of desperation after working for many years. I thought he was speaking to me. Oh, I'm sorry.
I feel as though, I think staff has been very reasonable here. If you look, for me personally, when you look at the history, and they've been really cooperative, they look at ways that they can make this work in different ways. And that, so we have a duty here to maintain, consistency with the code. And you maybe consider if there's a way that if you, to me, the important thing here is to create the privacy you need for federal highway. Still, I think you can still maintain adherence to the code as the staff is recommending,
with a 4-foot fence and create landscaping behind it. And I know that lot sizes are small in Lake Forest and you want more property space for your outdoor, where you want to
No,
live. And so let me just finish up. I'll be done real quick. But I think there's creative ways. It's amazing what you can do with small space and landscaping. And for me, the mango trees, yeah, they're mango trees. I mean, they're not going to be affected by a fence. There's no footer that's going to cut through the property. So,
And
yeah,
we're really not here for a mango.
yeah.
We looked at this, and I don't want to say too much, because I'm not sure. But the permits were given, the city were 4-foot fence was installed, permit was signed off, and then a 6-foot fence.
Mhm.
We are here for a variance regarding 30 inches from the sidewalk. Does that 6 have to go to, we're here for the 6-foot high and a 30-inch?
Well, there's two choices, right?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. You could either have a 4-foot fence, then you don't need the setback, right? Then you could put landscaping behind, like you suggested, or you could have a 6-foot fence, but you'd have to move it back 30 inches and put landscaping in front.
Correct.
By moving it back, the concern is the mango trees. So if the concern is the mango trees, perhaps, it's a trade-off, right?
Right.
Which is the better option? There's two solutions to this that don't, and the issue we're facing too is that there's A, B, C, D criteria that all of us, you said we have to have all of them, right? So we can't just say one of them. Maybe we feel like the strict application would deprive the applicant of any reasonable use of the land. Okay, again, what's reasonable use, right? You're an attorney too, maybe, right? So we're both attorneys, so that can be interpreted.
Right.
But even if we agreed with that, what about A, which says that, this property is, that this does not generally apply to nearby buildings, but other buildings have that same issue, right? So it's difficult for us to, we have to agree to all of these, right?
Correct.
In order to grant the variance.
I think there's two different arguments at least that are coming from this. It's kind of being, it's being implied that we're denying security because we're not allowing you to have a fence, which is not the case. The issue is that you need to have the fence in the proper location, and as Bob said earlier, there was the initial installation where it was signed off on, and then immediately a 6-foot fence showed up after the fact, and we talked about this, we don't want to bring up past cases, but we talked about that ad nauseum, at length in the last hearing about how all the negotiation had happened, how you work with staff, how it had gone back and forth. So I don't really see any new issues here. As several people have pointed out, there are solutions for you to have this fence and to have your privacy and your security. And as soon as that the fence is installed so that it complies with the city regulation, which are there for a reason. They're not there just to punish people. They're there for a reason, as Cedar pointed out, for a couple of different reasons. You're able to move forward with getting your rolling gate for your driveway and to get the screening on federal highway or whatever. The visual impact of the 8-foot fence is not going to stop people from viewing you from federal highway. So it's all those other issues are stemming from the fact that this one fence does not comply. And as we've said, there's solutions to fixing that so that it's not an issue any longer. That's the position.
Well, and even if we said, 30 inches, maybe we could make it, you can't. If you don't have 30 inches, you really can't grow a hedge or a plant or whatever. No, I agree. I just think this is an odd situation.
So, I don't know what kind of things can happen as far as the code enforcement, the leaning, that type of thing, if there's any relief from that, I can't tell you.
There is a fine reduction as soon as the project comes or the property comes into compliance. Then the code enforcement folks have let me know that they will work with her to go through the process to potentially she can apply for a lien reduction and to move forward with that.
There's a real quick, just as an aside, I'm from the Florida Panhandle and Seaside, Florida, you've probably heard of it. All those little lots they have in that little community, there are tiny lots, and every single house has a 4 foot, a small fence in front of it, and they ought to be different. Some have landscaping behind it where you can't even see the house, but it's amazing what you can do with that, you know? And you can still adhere to the code, and it would be, you know, you can do beautiful things with it, and you can still have your privacy. So I think, for me personally, I think the key here would be to have your security on the basic federal highway at all costs, for me personally. That's what I would believe, but, anyway, just my 2 cents.
But yeah, but I mean, the fence on federal highway is not, not the issue we're discussing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So. Are there any other questions or comments? Any more? Do we have any public comment?
Yes, yes, we do.
Were they in our package that we got email?
So you have some, we have 2 additional comments that came in after the packet was published. And give me one moment. So this first one comes from Erica Gettig. Said she's writing this letter in support of a 29-foot stretch of fence on the property of Giovanna Dominguez Timor. This fence serves as a vital privacy and security barrier, and given the dimensions and shape of her lot, must be permitted to remain as moving. It will eliminate both privacy and security. I imagine members of the Historic Preservation Committee have a range of ways of viewing variances for historic buildings, from considering the original plans and neighborhood of the structure to examining its current use. In my mind, the building's current use should hold considerable sway. If a resident feels unsafe and something as inconsequential as a fence can greatly enhance his or her safety, a variance should be considered, especially when it in no way damages or even alters the historic building. In addition, it seems important to consider the intentions of the owner. In this case, Giovanna has demonstrated her intent to be a good neighbor and care for her home, as demonstrated by her home's recent selection as a Paraco Home of the Month. I appreciate your willingness to listen to the public feedback and enforce policies in ways that support local neighborhoods and residents. Thank you for taking time. And I think I have one other one. This is from Brendan McCarthy, 212 7th Avenue North. In my humble opinion, the recently installed fence on the property located at 301 8th Avenue North in Lake Worth Beach, Florida is aesthetically pleasant as well as functional. If the Historic Preservation Board can find a means by which it can grant a variance for said improvement, it would be fine by me. And those are the only 2 additional ones we have besides what you received in your packet.
All right, we have no more comments, no questions.
I mean, I just, you know, I understand all these variances. Being on a sidewalk, the city goes to do something, it's right there.
Mhm.
So, the maintenance guys go by, something happens, the pickup machine, whatever. That's why they're set back those 30 inches. Personally, I don't have an issue with 6 feet in that back corner. I'm a fellow corner resident, you know. But I don't know how, I just can't see it. Anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion.
Sorry, hold on. Here are the two motions are on the screen and they're also in your packet.
If the board so chooses, I do also want to make sure that you know, in addition to these draft motions to approve or deny, you can also approve with conditions.
We have a motion.
Well,
I mean, I moved to deny the project, as stated and proposed. I wish there was.
You have to read it in.
Yeah, I know, I'm just thinking if there's a condition I can put to it, but I don't think there really kind of is, but yeah, I moved to deny Hrpb project number 22-015-00002. A variance to allow 29 linear feet of 6-foot high fencing along 8th Avenue North without the required setback or landscape screen for the property located at 301 8th Avenue North, because the applicant has not established by confidence with textual evidence that the application is compliant with the city of Lake Forest Beach land development regulations.
Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Unanimous.
And I just had a little sidebar with our attorney, and I will be following up with Yolanda Robinson, the Assistant Director in Code Enforcement, and we'll see if we can, whatever leniency we can work out for Ms. Moore through the code enforcement process and give her as much leniency as we can. And I'll let Ms. Robinson know that we support that, and then we'll look at what we can do within the
I
city.
would, yeah, I would appreciate that as well. I think that, if we can work this through, I think that, we can get it settled, but also with this least amount of pain as possible, then that would be appreciated as well, so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Great. So we're going on to item B. Hrpb project number 22-001-001-239, consideration of a certificate of appropriateness for window door and siding replacement in single family house located at 216 South J Street. The subject property is contributing resource within the Southeast Concern District, located in low density multifamily zoning district, and the future land use designation of medium density residential. Yeah, this staff presentation.
We do, Mr. Chairman. Hold on one second. Sorry if I don't share it through Zoom. The folks at home can't see it. There we go.
Awesome. So for the record, this is Annie Greening, Senior Preservation Planner with the Division of Planning, Zoning, and Historic Preservation. And we can go to the next slide. Here we have our location map for 216 South J Street. We can go next slide. And so here are just some current photos of the property. The existing home was built circa 1925 in the wood frame vernacular style. And as our chair mentioned, it is a contributing resource in the historic district. Next, please. So these are some photos of the Florida room that was added to the house. According to our Florida master site file, this was circa 1978. And so the windows that are going to be or proposed to be replaced are on this Florida room specifically. Next slide. And then we just have the other elevations of that Florida room. And next. So the request that we have before us is proposing to replace the windows on that Florida room, as well as replace the front door and some siding. As shown on these drawings, 2 of the proposed replacement windows, so the ones on either side of that Florida room, the applicant is proposing either horizontal roller windows or awning windows. Next, please. And so that's just the awning windows. And we'll go next. So in our design guidelines, it states that appropriate windows for wood frame vernacular are double hung, single hung, or casement type windows. And this is just pulled straight from our design guidelines. You can see some examples of windows there. And can you go next? And this was also pulled from our design guidelines. I thought this would be a helpful rendering showing a sort of similar porch with those 6/1 windows. Next slide, please. So the roller windows and awning windows are not consistent with our architectural style that we have here, the wood frame vernacular style. Staff recommends denial of the proposed roller or awning windows and changing those 2 windows to the 6/1 single hung windows, which are present on the rest of the house and proposed in that front of the Florida room. We have draft conditions of approval there, most of our standard, and then standard, yet having the door match our guidelines, siding repairs match the original. Really what we're talking about is just those 2 horizontal roller or awning windows.
And go into the Muntins though, you know.
Now, the windows that we're talking about, they're the ones facing the street, front door, side windows.
They're not, Aaron, if you could go back to the, I believe it's called request the very first request page with that drawing. The ones facing the road, the applicant is proposing to do 6/1 single hung windows.
So the sliders are in the rear of the home.
So this is the front of the home, but it's the sides of that Florida room. So it's,
I'm not following.
sorry, could you go back to the photos, Aaron?
Sorry.
Yeah, the border of the piece.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
so it's the side, could you go back one more, Aaron, too? So here you can see the left is the front of that Florida room that faces the road, and the window here labeled old number 1. That and the one on the other side of that Florida room are the ones we're talking about.
That's actually the side of the house, front here.
Correct.
Okay.
So just to clarify, is he replacing these with 6/1s?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just the side, the two sides.
Now, can we see, I mean, are we facing another house? Can you see it from the street?
If you go back one more, this is the view from the
Okay,
street.
so we're talking the windows here or the windows on
Yes.
this side?
So
Over
both
here?
right here,
So on
here,
both sides of that Florida
That
room that
little
sticks
Florida
out,
room.
yes.
it's a horizontal slider.
I mean, we all want to know.
So, and I'll just tell you that the design guidelines do allow a little bit more leeway typically in the back of the structure. And so this, like a lot of our applications, this comes here because this is not, we are not able, there are things that come before you like this, or like the previous case, or things that staff is not allowed to approve. We do not have the authority to administratively approve those. So those are here. So the applicant here will discuss why they want those rollers, and then they can bring that up, and then you would decide if you would like to grant relief in those two
That's
side
in-
windows.
that's in there.
Yes, could you come up and introduce yourself, sir?
Nice guy.
Thank you. I'm Jacob Mackey. I'm at 216 Belgrade Street. This is my place. I've been restoring this house for quite a while now. I've been working my way from the back to the front. I expended difficulties. But what I wanted to do is, when they put this Florida room in, they just put these windows that you see here, and that was not consistent. So what I'm doing is I'm moving those 6 over windows to the front on each side of the door. However, if you go to the side view, the north side. So where it says old number 1, if I were to replace that with the style that you see on the left where it says the new 2018, I would have to remove a lot of electrics and sewer, my sprinkler system, there's a bunch of stuff there. This is an area that doesn't directly, you can see it as you drive by, but it doesn't, it's not very viewable from the street.
You can't find windows for the
Okay.
size.
This area was taken out at one time before these were put in this section here.
Is this a structural header here?
So there, in this, when they redid this front, there is no headers in there at all.
This is there.
So what I'm trying to do is properly, the whole front of the house where I'm doing the 6 overs, that's gonna be completely redone, new framing, new front siding, the whole 9 yards. Well, what I need to do here on this old side is just try to get something in there. And I wanted it to match up with the top of the new windows that you see and the ones that would be in the front. However, even from inside the porch there, I think if I go all the way down to match the windows that are on the rest of the house, it's gonna be, it's gonna be difficult.
How high are those windows approximately? I mean, because pictures are deceiving until you look at them. We're looking 2 feet or.
I mean, it's like the front, if you look at the front of the house, you
Right.
can see like that's not a header that's in there. I'm under the impression they put, it was like a screened in room.
Right.
And then they just put whatever plywood and whatever, because those windows are just screwed into plywood right
So
now.
I mean, this window right here, we're looking 2 foot, 3 foot window. It doesn't look that tall. of a window.
It should be. Because if you look, I should have the dimensions on here if you want to compare them to.
That was just, like Aaron mentioned, buttons and mulligans and that type of thing. I understand your slider window. Because
When I initially met a long time ago with someone from the historical board that's no longer here. Well, he mentioned, I could use horizontal sliders there. After doing a little more research, I wanted to do the 6 overs in the front.
Yeah.
But inside I wanted to do, I think I would prefer awning style and just have them, they're gonna be 2 feet by 5 feet.
Just a note too, as well as an alternative, if, with the shape of the the window configuration. They could do a window, they could do with the horizontal rollers. They could do an applied muntin, which the muntins are these little thingies, right? And the mullion is the big thingy in the middle, right? To be technical, right? So what another option would be with the horizontal rollers is to do basically a 2/2 in each roller.
So like a 4 square brick in each.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned an awning window replacing that with.
A frame, one that's similar to what you see there, but just one pane and the awning opens up. So what I'm trying to do is some accent lighting, but also, you know, that window is horizontal style, so it doesn't match the rest of them.
Well, yeah, we're talking those two windows and opposite them on the other side of the room. Is that what we're looking window wise? Okay.
The front of the house faces the west, and we're talking about the windows
I know
on the
that,
south
yeah.
side. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what I can get in there without completely redoing everything and having to lower the wall, and whatnot, to match those windows.
No, they're tricky when they zip those summer porches and enclose them. They did anything they could on the weekends and
Yeah.
made them what they are in 1940, 50, 60, 70.
So the work that I will do on the side windows, the old one and the four, that it will allow me to put a header in there. But I'll be able to save a lot of money by not having to redo the siding, remove the siding below, and then replace all the, utility where they're.
But, you know, you're talking uniformity, you're talking where you to keep with the historic preservation aspect as far as the look of the home. You're putting awesome 6/1s all over there. It should be something that complements, be it an awning with a couple of muttons, sorry. Something that'll flow, not just a one.
Yeah.
6/1, 6/1, one.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's one of the options that you see that provide or whatever will provide, bringing them all. And breaking up the,
Just breaking up the light.
breaking up the paint, the glazing a little bit. So that it resembles or has some sort of complementary value to the other windows. That was something I didn't really consider about it. We're just having a single.
Would that be horizontal sliders then with just the, the buttons on one side or both sides?
Staff could kind of suggest, he was talking horizontal slider with, buttons on both sides, right? Kind of to break up the pattern, Amy,
When you say both sides, you mean
Amy.
interior and exterior?
No, or
Oh, sorry,
slider, there's a lot of
Yes.
things, so.
Yeah.
where do you put the buttons?
Yeah, so it'd make this, it would be one here, and then that would create a pattern of 4 in each window. So it'd be applied muntins that would be a 4 square.
A line across.
It would
So
be a line
4.
across and then one line down the middle. So it would create 4 in each little
Oh, I see.
square. So it'd be more like the 6 part of the
Easier.
6/1.
To make it fit.
If they allow the awning, could you do the same like 6/over pattern so that at least it has like that continuous? Because that's how I've seen some properties. do
That's
it.
a
At
great
least you
idea,
can keep
too.
The whole top portion the same.
Yeah, I think it's so.
So when you did if you did the awning, would you do the mullion so it'd be 3/3, or would you do 3 on
Yeah.
the top?
Yeah, because if it's like
It would be
I
the
guess it
top.
would fit to look like the double, because that's like, looks like a kind of like a double, like half of the.
So
one
the
on
total
side.
is 6.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it looks like the top part of the 6/1.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and then that would get you your awning.
Okay, I guess I can see that. I just assumed because the window was gonna be a smaller size, that it would be matching than the bottom part of the window and nicer for the light, but I don't see it as looking better, but I'm willing to, I've been waiting for a while.
Let's just get it done. I would work with staff with, as far as, I would be okay, sorry, with just some breaking up that light pattern, be it an awning or your vertical slider, but just giving it something, so when you drive by and look over, you're not looking and seeing. Open spaces.
Okay. Is that something that we can improve then? So I can start.
That's something they can approve staff, depending on how we do our motion, and if we approve you, it's something that staff.
Right,
will
so if you
approve.
liked that, what you would do is whoever made the motion would amend condition number 1 And it would be to work with staff to either, and I think, Mariana, if you want to go with yours, essentially it would be 2 awning windows in each location, each with muntins to create a 6/6 pattern, right? And so to work with staff on that configuration.
Or a 3/, we're okay, I'm sorry, Chairman. With a broken light pattern that would be complementary to the 6/1.
You need something specific, or do you need
Well, I need a ballpark of what you're comfortable with. So that's why I said, because we have the architect here, maybe she could make the motion and give us the range that we can work with.
We go back to the actual.
Sure.
draft of the house. So what I did is I was trying to save interior wall room and, but if I were to make the size of the window match the size of it, where the ones on the top, see how it's a little bit smaller? I could make it equal, so that way, I think that would look, I would like that way for, yeah. I was doing this as like the window still, you could look through it. But it's still-
I don't think we'd have an issue with this, increasing the size.
I made it smaller just because I like the look of it, but if you needed me to break up the light pattern, I would rather just make those windows the same height as the actual or the 6/over portion.
Right.
And so there would just be like a 6/over on each side, but then there would be nothing. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct,
Yeah. So the motion would be the replacement windows shall match the 6/6 configuration on the end.
Subject windows.
Yeah, shall match the 6/6 portion, shall match the 6/6 portion of the existing windows on the rest of the house. Okay,
Yeah, that sounds good. Great.
okay. So the motion would be to approve with the condition as amended, and you could say as I stated, if you're comfortable
I
with
move
that.
to approve with conditions as stated by Aaron, Hrpb, project number 22-001002396, certificate of appropriateness, POA for window door siding replacement for the property located at 216 South J Street, based upon the competent substantial evidence in the staff report pursuant to the City of Lakewood Beachland Development Regulation and historic preservation requirements.
a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
I'll take that.
you did it. You just say
I
second.
did that.
You-
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. All those. Yeah, unanimous.
Thank you very much.
They'll take it.
And I will just say that there are times when we bring stuff to the board, it's great. We always like to reach a compromise if we can, but there are things that we can't do administratively. But we do really try to work with folks as much as possible to keep them in that administrative process. Just because, and right now our Hrpb or our historic review times for historic compliance for administrative review are taking approximately 1 week. So if you comply with the design guidelines, you come in and you do your administrative stuff, it's a week turnaround. Yen and Annie are killing it. So sometimes we got to figure something out, and that takes a board meeting, but other than that, they're doing a ton of reviews per week. We don't have any planning issues, Mr. Chairman, but we do have a departmental reports, but I know we have a time for, I don't see any public, so. Do you,
Doesn't look like there's any public comments, so we could move on to department reports.
so we just want to make you aware of 2 issues that we're monitoring.
So, yeah, no formal presentation for this one. We just wanted to let you know we've had notification of 2 projects in the past week, I believe, in the past week or so, tagged by inspectors for doing work outside of their scope of permit. This is at 314 South K Street and 501 North K Street. Both were approved for window permits and have started going to reframing entire floors of homes.
So one of them may come before you for a historic waiver because there was termite damage. So we're gonna see the results of it, but it is, just, it's dangerous to do work without permit because on one of them, basically they might lose a density, a unit, because they're a non-conforming property. And so because they've worked so far outside of their scope, they might lose one of their units on their property that are non-conforming.
Sure. I guess.
Yeah, I'm
Repeat what what you said at the beginning, that these are projects that are not permitted, or they're gone beyond the scope of the permit, or which one?
Yeah, so they've gone beyond the scope of their permit. They were both permitted for window replacements, and when inspectors came for standard building inspections, they noticed that they were reframing houses,
Oh,
which
okay.
were not allowed within that
Okay,
permit.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But the window looked good.
So,
Okay.
so we just like to keep you, because whenever there's a property that's contributing and then we just like to note that, and then we'll also note if there's any condemnations in the districts as well. So, sometimes people report out to you that people are doing work without permits, and we are aware, and we are red tagging properties.
Appreciate that. That's everything?
Board member comments, unless you guys,
I was wondering about department
No.
reports, right? Okay, board member comments. Anybody?
Sorry, I lost my temper a little bit, but there was a lot more background to that one, so I apologize to the board.
Yeah. It's,
Other than that, welcome, welcome, welcome.
and
Okay.
anybody else? Well, I would just like to welcome all the new members to the board. It's good seeing you all, meeting you all. This is just my second hearing being the chair, so bear with me. I'm still kind of working into it. So, and I look forward to working with you all for the next year or so.
thank you so much.